Okay, so here we are, and what will we talk about?
Yeah, there's only a million subjects. Well, between us, it's always the communication thing and the DNA thing, right? I mean, I'm basically saying life is dirt simple. It's a DNA molecule. We're evolving. We're just cockroaches with a lot of personality. We're tap dancing cockroaches. And there's this simple idea that, yeah, we got to communicate that to each other. And so over the millennia, we've come up with these easy notions like do unto others as you'd have others do unto you. I mean, dirt simple logic, right? Who could argue with it? Nobody. Nobody with a rational brain, right? And yet, we're on the brink of World War III, right? We can't figure it out somehow. Somehow, we figured out that this is the truth, right? That we're all in this together. We're all feeling things. We don't win by enslaving each other. We don't win by beating the crap out of each other and raping each other and taking each other's stuff and raping and pillaging in our sophisticated, civilized manner rather than the old brutal way.
Right.
And we can't do it somehow. Somehow, we fail. And it's just ideas from one person to another,
Yeah.
right? And so I sort of thought of it yesterday. I figured it out in a way. It's just like the breeding thing. Most people aren't breeding to sustain human population, right? If it was up to most people, the human race would die out.
Well, I think at least
Okay?
half of pregnancies are unexpected. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of pregnancies aren't generally planned, and even there, I mean, I think that's generally.
Well, that just makes it even worse. That means that even more, if you include the accidents, then you're got to say that, like maybe even 90% of people don't even want kids, and they just kind of fall into it. They trip on a stick, so to speak, and they fall into the mud of parenthood.
Well, no, I agree with that, Gary. I mean, I think that for me, the part of the question would be, how would I say this? Okay, in my own life, I would say that I think I kind of came to self-awareness very slowly and intermittently. I think as most people do. It was I was a late person. I some people it comes very young. The sense of self didn't really crystallize for me until I was maybe a teenager. Prior to that, I was just a hyperactive blast of energy and an assorted mixed match of activities moment to moment, and it was like a dream without a concrete recognition of myself behind all of it. I mean, I think a sense of oneself settles in very slowly. And so I think you're right. That I mean, some people, if they get pregnant as a teenager, they're still living in this kind of, they hardly even realize they're there and the significance of what they're doing. I completely agree with that. But I guess, the larger point for my own, okay, go ahead.
That made that clear for me because I was exactly the opposite. I found out real early, and it was all about a clock that was on the mantle. And I was obsessed with the clock. I had to know how the clock knew what time it was, right? Because this clock knew what I didn't know how to tell time. And this friggin' clock knew how to make time. And so I thought the universe ran through this stupid clock on the mantle. And so anyway, I was a little kid. I tried to figure out how the clock worked. I'd pick it up, I'd drop it. So I broke it like 3 times, right? And so my parents were really pissed at me because I kept breaking the clock. And so that's when I learned that I'm accountable, that I have these fingers that can break the world, that I could almost break time. I'm breaking the most important thing in the universe. I'm breaking time. You know what I'm saying? It was in my little brain, I had committed a universal crime. I didn't crime just a crime against the clock or just a crime against my parents' orders not to touch the clock. I committed a crime against the universe because I somehow messed with time. You know what I mean? So that's when, so I started getting very paranoid as a kid, like, I can make things live or die. Like you can kill bugs. You can change the destiny of an ant by throwing a stick in its way. I learned that I can fuck with things. Oops, sorry. And I didn't like that. That knowledge scared me.
Yeah. No, I guess I can relate to it. I mean, the larger question I was trying to raise though is, I think from my perspective, one of the points where we really seem to haggle is the question of is this or is this not justified? And I feel like I'm sometimes misrepresented by you as if my position is windy poops and fairy dust and ponies for everyone and rainbows and whatnot. But I think what I'm trying to say is that as a fact, I think it's ambiguous. I think that it's not all endless suffering, and even where there is suffering, there's lots of different kinds of suffering. So I think we would need to differentiate physical pain from emotional suffering, forms of anxiety, forms of meaninglessness, irrelevance, hopelessness as an experience. I think from my own perspective, I would want to complicate some of the divisions between thought and feeling and reasoning. I think that those are words. We can say the word thought and we can say the word feeling, but it may be that there's a whole organism in an environment that I don't know if a human can have a thought without also feeling that thought. And so it seems like we need a word, something like, fill thought, where you're describing the simultaneity of some of that experience. And I'm not trying to give fancy language.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I like I said, I think we fundamentally agree on some of this, that the words sometimes get in the way. You say a word or I say a word, I'm going to react to the word, and you're not really saying the word without that context. Like every time I say think, I'm really saying think with a little splash of feeling spice on it, okay?
Right.
Because we don't think without having an emotional response to what we're thinking about.
I agree.
We're motivated to move. I've always said this. We wouldn't move if it wasn't for feelings. We have to get emotional about our life. You can't just have a logical principle. You have to convert it into an ego mechanism to make you do it. You aren't going to move without a personal incentive.
Right.
All right?
Right.
That's just the way it is.
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting too to try to align feeling and movement. Some of the more significant scholars who I've done work with, particularly a guy named Hans Jonas, he would say that to move and to feel are the same thing. That's why plants, he would say, you can't feel with anxiety. You can't really rustle a plant because they don't flee from predators. They don't have distant appetites that need to be satiated. There's something about, but then there's a problem of, an insect doesn't have a limbic system. It doesn't have the requisite physiology for us to claim. I don't know if it thinks either. I think it's somehow the disclosure of its environment is so who it is that it can't separate itself off and, how do I say that? It's not internally representing in addition to disclosing the world. It is the disclosure of the world. Complex organisms slowly internally represent it in addition to their perceptual disclosing of it. And then, I think higher animals, you get limbic systems and you get to primates. And, as you move up the system, it just gets to be more complex. But I want to go back to the language thing, Maybe if I could put you on the spot here, I want to get some clarity over the determinism issue. I think that was another thing. I guess I've said before at many places that I don't think the fully deterministic universe is intelligible. I don't think it's anything that a person could experience. Even if there is something metaphysically about a plane of physical matter always being only in the position that it is, and because movement and things are always contiguous to things that are neighboring, it will always seem like determinism is the case. But we can think about things, we can plan things, and our memories and our forms of imagination collectively create an experience of agency, decision-making, choice, and all this kind of stuff. And I guess I'm wondering, do you think it's compatible to claim that the universe is deterministic, but then also to claim that a person doesn't have a right to impose sentience by reproduction? Because it would seem like if you believe in a deterministic universe, then you'd be more inclined to be a pro-lifer. And the real imposition is stopping that deterministic flow of just people getting pregnant before they even realize what's happening to them.
Yeah, well, determinism doesn't outlaw Shakespeare. You know what I'm saying? So determinism doesn't say that human beings don't acquire knowledge and understanding, and we can figure out that we're part of a formula, that there's a recipe, the Betty Crocker human cake mix recipe for a human being, and that we're basically made up of these certain ego mechanisms. We gain a little bit of knowledge, we scheme, we wheel and deal, little gears in our head turn, so to speak. We can call them programs, whatever you want to call them, but they're this gear work of bullshit that runs basically from our ego perspective, and we put things in categories, and we And all of that is part of the determinism. I was through the determinism to be at this point, to have acquired, not only did I survive for 4 billion years, you know, all my ancestors, my genetic code survived the Black Plague, it survived the cholera, it survived slavery, it did all of that. Okay, and I've also, through civilization, gained all this knowledge that's also survived through all this time. We did all these experiments. Other people died in the laboratories and, you know, gave themselves cancer, finding out information for me. And so I've gleaned all of this very deterministically. I can look at the past and I can see exactly the roads that led to me.
Well, I know. I think the relationship between the present and the past is easy to claim is determined, but the relation between the present and the future, is that determined?
Well, I think it's just the same inevitability.
No, the past is inevitable because it already happened.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm going to read my speech. Okay, I've been programmed to read it. Okay, it's the roads have all led to me doing this at this moment, and I'm going to walk the road that's sort of been dictated by those roads and the intersection and the I am a cue ball flying through the pool balls. Okay. Maybe I'm going to be a Martin Luther King and I'll spread them all over the place, or maybe I'll just be a gutter ball. Maybe I'll just fly into a pocket and disappear forever.
Okay, no, I don't disagree with you, but I guess if I say what you're saying makes sense, and I do, it makes sense to me, but if I start to include all of those social factors which have determined me to experience my freedom, and I will go to clocks and calendars. Clocks were invented at a certain point, as were calendars. Now, again, what we mean by clocks, what we mean by calendars, there's lots of different forms. They vary from culture to culture. But modern clocks, just as an example, you know, the telegraph united clocks, set them synchronized to one another and created the time zones. We created a world that now moves, like for example, you know, I'm part of an organization that reserved rooms for a conference for the summer of 2013. Now, in some odd sense, how can I be navigating? Now, the world could end. Lots of people are telling us that the world is going to end in 2012. How can I be securing a room at a facility for a particular date? And I mean, I'm spending money on this to secure this. Now, how is that possible?
Well, we have imagination. So our model, that you were talking about the insects before, and that's the big distinction, okay? I think they still can feel, because I think they learn. And I think learning and feeling have to be tied together.
Okay,
you have
but
to have
when I selected one hotel rather than another, aren't I exercising some agency right there? When I decided to propose to even host this.
Your programming is choosing, but it's using an equation based on your model. So your model is augmented. You see the universe, you can apply a whole model of the future and the past on top of what you see right now. So the TV is now three-dimensional in the sense that you've added the dimension of the past and a model of the prospectable future. Okay, and you're just calculating. You're saying, well, what do I see in that future model? Well, I see the economy might be better. Well, hey, maybe the ticket's cheaper now than it's going to be then because inflation will destroy this. And maybe I'll even buy my lunch now because my lunch in the future will be cheaper now than if I actually buy it in the future.
Well,
so you're making a
what
calculation.
What kind of freedom do you want? You want superlative? Does it have to be something super fantastical? If that's not pretty amazing from a natural evolutionary perspective, what more do you want?
I'm just saying that the word freedom, okay, like the word spontaneous, like the word random, these are words that are not explicitly true, okay?
How about agency, choice, and decision making?
Well, I mean, it's an illusion, but our consciousness is also...
I think if you say that there is no agency, there is no choice, and there is no decision making, then I think by default you don't get to claim that people don't have the right to impose sentience on another. See, you're holding contradictory positions. Because if you tell people that they don't have a right to impose, you're assuming that they have the choice to impose or to not impose.
It's not that they have a choice. The point is that we're all balls on the pool table.
What do you mean by the word imposition?
We all impact each other. We all impact each other. I'm not saying it as some sort of authority saying to you, you are bad, you're doing the bad thing. I'm saying it because I intend to bounce on them, to hit them, to affect them, to change their motion, to cause a gravity well that they'll get caught up in, that'll change their direction, just like Einstein would say you would change the direction of a photon. I'm trying to affect them with the statement, you're an idiot. I'm not trying to do anything other than affect them. I'm not judging them, I'm affecting them. And the point is that's how we all change our direction. That's how all decisions are made, is somebody gives us a piece of knowledge. They give us a piece of information. We take that piece of red clay, let's say you give me a piece of red clay. I got blue clay, I got green clay, I got pink clay, I got all the kinds. I can mix those pieces of clay together and I can create a new color. Okay? My brain will mix them together, create new things. Okay? It's completely the recipe is deterministic, the recipe is mechanical, but in fact a new thing is created. And we now have puce clay. And I throw the puce clay into the world, and now other people can be puced.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I guess I'm trying to think of how we can follow this. I mean, yeah, I don't dispute any of those claims. I think that's right. I guess. I mean, to me, part of the question is it seems more like. I mean, take the contemporary debate about birth control. I mean, it's ridiculous that right now you have major Republican Party. People are trying to deny birth control to people. I mean, it's unbelievable, right? Now, I think they want to say that it's more natural, and again, this is part of their argument, and they're trying to affect people, but they're trying to affect people with what they're going to claim is, quotes, the truth. And so they're going to make an appeal to some truth, which is you really don't have control and agency over this. In fact, lots of people get pregnant without having. I'm not trying to argue for that position, obviously. And see, this is why I don't like it. Sometimes I've been called, quotes, a pro-natalist. And I don't even know what that term means. Pro-lifer would seem there isn't already an established word for it. But as a non-kidder, I'm someone who doesn't have kids, and I certainly. I'm not advocating that people have children, but I'm not going to tell people that it's not within their right to have them.
Well, I know, but isn't that like if I made the argument, a logical argument, saying nuclear power is very, very dangerous, it's too caustic, it's too messy, you can't play with it. And then we just say, though, but make your own decision. What good is it for me to say I'm not going to build a nuclear power plant in my backyard if the guy next door does?
I would say to you that's a bad analogy.
He's going to blow me up just as quick.
I think that's a very, very bad analogy. That is, the world...
I got here.
No.
Right? An anti-natalist did not give birth to me. I got here through pro-natalism. And that was my argument I want to finish from before. Is that the minority of people who are doing this pro-natalism stuff. Most people do not have sufficient children to maintain human population. So the truth is, a tiny minority of people, 15% of human beings on the planet Earth, are making the decision. All right? Not the majority. The minority is making the decision. And that, to me, is undemocratic. And go back to your Republican Party analogy, that's the problem with, this is a primary. So what are they doing in the primary? They're not trying to convince people in the major society. They're trying to placate people in their party to secure votes. They're trying to get approval from a minority again, a minority of the American population. Okay, they're trying to get their sanction. Right. All right, and they're going to earn it by telling them complete, utter nonsense.
Right, but I guess from my own perspective, though, the anti-natalist position is as far out there as the pro-life. It's basically denying other people's right to have agency to choose and to exercise their capacity to make decisions about their life and the meaning of life. And I think to say to people that they have, I think to say to people that they have to find the meaning of life in something other than children and having family and family bonds and cousins and all of the growth of those things, and they have to find meaning elsewhere, I think you're denying the basic structure of life.
And I think they're denying that they're playing God without a license. Okay,
I think
we don't
God
allow
is
people.
You making a language word. I think that's you playing God with language, calling them playing
you can
God.
Think it. I'm just saying they're playing God. They're creating the most valuable thing in the universe. They're saying I can manage the most important critical thing in the universe. And these irresponsible morons can't even raise their kids to be civilized. I mean, they're totally out of control, totally beyond their competence level. I mean, why would you defend people making irresponsible decisions like this for the most important, valuable thing in the universe? They're going to sit there and decide, I'm going to do the experiment. I'm going to inject the chimpanzee with the cancer. I'm going to own the slave. I'm going to exploit the women. I'm going to... No, why should you be able to do any of these things?
It's ambiguous.
We made them illegal because they're an imposition. Having children is an imposition. You do not ask your victim's permission to impose this life on it. The average human being that's having kids, would you want them as parents?
I guess I would say that maybe we differ in that I think people are good. They're on the better. It's ambiguous. I think people are, when the going gets tough, people are great. The problem is that the conditions right now are so comfortable and the conditions are so good that people are rotten. I think when the situation is bad, human beings are amazing. I guess I really believe they are. And I agree that lots of people who are parents shouldn't be parents, or if they are going to be parents, they need a lot more care, a lot more time, a lot more seriousness to it, and they shouldn't just be doing it without thought. But I also think that to say that, again, that a person doesn't have a right to have children, I think that's you wanting to impose your view upon the person. Again, it's one thing to want to affect them by conversation. It's one thing to advocate. It's another thing to try to bring it to policy. It's yet a third thing to say that you're going to impose it by force or by some sort of by fiat, military and or state apparatus power.
We do this against all kinds of minorities, okay? So when minorities get small enough, like rapist, we say too bad rapist. We say too bad pedophile. By your logic, why should we deny a pedophile his natural sexual impulse? All right, we could almost argue that 1,000,000 years ago, men were probably having intercourse with 12-year-old girls. So we can make the argument that what they're doing is natural, that you should be, the young girls should be pregnant because that's how that's what the biology screams. No. It gives them their period at 12 years old because that's when they're supposed to start popping out the babies. So let's go back to nature. I want to be.
No.
I'm just saying it's a fact of your natural world.
No, that's not the position I'm advocating at all.
Well, if you're going to justify one human perspective and say it's sacrosanct because it's socially accepted, that's really not a valid argument. Because there's a social sanction.
Reproduction is the basic condition of life.
What?
It's
life
the
is
condition of life.
Argument is that the DNA molecule is retarded. That's the anti-natalist argument. DNA shouldn't be deciding anything. Logic and our intelligence should be making decisions.
Well, see, you're making a cosmic mistake because you're taking your own reason, logic, and intelligence as if it weren't simply the product and expression of this DNA that you think is so stupid. Why are you trusting what obviously is going to give you a stupid output if it had dumb input?
No, I'm sorry.
How come you can't critique your own position?
I'm sorry.
You seem like you're really trusting your own ability to think, despite the fact that you think that the DNA is stupid.
Again, yes, exactly.
How did you come to that conclusion then? How are you sure that you're intelligent enough to know that?
Let me finish the sentence. The DNA made the brain. It didn't make the intelligence put in the brain. The intelligence put in the brain has been manufactured over 20,000 years of human civilization where we have gleaned the facts and now we are filtering new facts with the facts we have gleaned. So we figure out that there's no boogeyman. We figure out there's no Zeus in the sky. We understand what thunder and lightning is. So now the logic is owning us. We are now evolving. The memes are evolving. That is the more powerful evolution that's taking place. As ideas are evolving, our genetic evolution is almost entirely irrelevant. No one's even paying attention to it, okay? Our genome is turning into crap. Okay, the only thing that's evolving now is the human personality, and that is being defined by such things as do unto others as others would have to do unto you. Or people like me bringing up metaphors of a maze game, or we're playing tic-tac-toe and we're getting too smart for tic-tac-toe.
I largely agree with that assessment. The communication technologies in the last several thousand years have radically transformed what we know as human, how we understand ourselves, how we interact. All those kinds of things. I don't think the jury went and they came back and the verdict is in that life is unjustified. I don't.
Well, I know you don't. You're not convinced. I'm completely convinced, okay? My understanding of the biology is this is a DNA molecule. It's replication for the sake of replication. The experiment has never been approved by the FDA, okay? It's never been examined. We have this maze game going on, these animals chasing nothing. It's a gladiator game. This is how I've metaphored it. It's a gladiator game, right? The gladiators go in, cut the crap out of each other, beat the crud out of each other, and then one guy holds up his sword and says, "I win!" There's no prize. There's no going to Disneyland. There's no nothing. And you're just... it's silly, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. And then the cleaners come in, speak up, they sponge off the walls, and they just do it all over again.
No.
And do it over again, do it over again, and do it over. Well, of course it's true, though, Corey. Come on. For every winner, there's 5 losers. For every World Series ring, okay, that's on a finger, how many defeated men are there? How many defeated men are there? For every Super Bowl ring, there's 99 losers. 1 winner, 99 losers.
You don't see it.
Not 50 women.
The winning was... No, look. The game and the spectacle are all the incidental moments which crystallize the growth and development of meaning that occurred during the training and the struggle. And so you don't get to see all of the backstage of the person who's there, who grew and developed and trained in their own discipline, and how they maybe had their own sense, again, their own sense of self-growth and development along it. When you watch the outward thing and who gets the whatnot, and then you're going to watch some person pout because they didn't get a little thing. I mean, give me a break, man. I mean, what you should be doing is critiquing that stupid psychology rather than trying to end life.
I mean, that's kind of bogus to sit there and say, you know, that's all it is. I'm the one making the argument. Okay, did you look at something like World War II, where we defeated the Japanese and we defeated the Nazis? Well, no, what we also did is we destroyed millions of great men on both sides, okay? These Nazi soldiers weren't all assholes. They weren't all idiots. They weren't lousy fathers. They might have been men who were going to cure cancer. These kamikazes weren't pieces of shit. They weren't garbage. They weren't towelheads. They weren't all this bullshit. I'm just saying the losers are real people. This isn't some
Gary, to say that war is unjustified, that's an easy argument. I think we all agree. To say that violence is unjustified, I think that's agreed there. To say that life is unjustified, you're trying to gain subscribers on YouTube.
Life is always violence. All life is violence. I'm alive because some Chinaman, I'm alive living the comfortable life I'm living because some Chinaman's risking cutting his fingers off to make me a stupid piece of plastic friggin' garbage. I mean, I have my life at somebody else's expense. That's how we live on this planet. We live at each other's expense.
That's right.
That's a truth. It's not a fantasy. It's a truth.
Very good. Okay, so yes. Well, if we're all living at each other's expense.
Okay, now we're back to this Stoic argument, and it's just not a good argument. This one, we just fundamentally disagree. I see nothing in this idea of victory for the sake of victory. And to argue that there is something valuable, you talked about the training and the preparation and all that stuff. Well, how many people get destroyed in that process? How many kids are paralyzed in pee-wee football? How many great athletes lose their career in college because of a knee injury?
Okay, let's go at this for a second.
So let's say you invested seven years playing basketball, right? 7 years of your life. You spent every day out there working the court. And then, you know, the year before you're going to graduate from high school, you pull your knee out. It's all over. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. A zero for your 7 years.
Life's a dance. You don't try to get somewhere.
I'm going
to try to get at this. Okay, oh man, I think you're so missing it. So Conference Report recently posted up a video called Rough Sex. And he was talking about some advertisement where some woman was wearing a neck brace, and I don't know, it was some vegan ad, I don't know what it was, but evidently her and her boyfriend, she and her boyfriend, they had some rough sex, and she looked pretty damaged. Some people were accusing of violence against women. People were going, no, you're taking this out of context. And then Conference Report was going, look, sometimes some engagements get a little rough, and, that's just the deal. And you start to think about that. Gary, I think part of the problem is that there's a scientific worldview on the rise which says there's one and only one value: health and longevity. And they act like if you minimize pain and you minimize suffering and you live a long time, you've had a successful life. And it may be that many of the things that make life invigorating, worth living, exciting, all these kinds of things, they have risks. They have potential dangers and harms, and that's just part of the deal.
And I would bet you that if I could truly monetize those risks, if I could put on the table your brother dying right before your eyes when you're, say, 7 years old, or I could put all these other nuclear disaster, meltdown kind of risks, the 200-year flood, not the 20-year flood, but the 200-year flood. If I could put that on the table and monetize it in some way, your death right now, if I could find it in the future, bring it to this present and say, look, you can buy your way out of this. All right, I'll cut 6 months off your cancer therapy. I'll cut this much off of this. You'd be bargaining really damn quick to get the hell out, all right, of that suffering, of that horror. If you draw the short straw, Corey, all right, you're going to bargain your way out of that short straw, and you would give up all the good you've ever experienced to get the hell out of that bed. I'm saying if I could truly put all the slavery, all the cholera, all the plague, all the war deaths, all the burning of lives, all the horrible crap that human beings have endured on this planet, all the months in concentration camps, not knowing where your wife is, not knowing where your kids are, not knowing what the fuck is happening on planet Earth anymore, totally desolate, alone, just take that feeling, take that experience, consolidate into a liquid and put it in front of you and say, go ahead, drink it, sucker. I'm saying if I could truly monetize what life really is, and people couldn't live on a delusion, couldn't live on their own comfort, couldn't live on their misperception of reality, couldn't live on a fake perception of reality, and had to actually drink the real drink, they wouldn't drink it.
I mean, it's so hard for me to just follow this line of argument. I mean, I guess I don't disagree that when you add up all of life's suffering, it looks really bad, but no individual has to take all of life's suffering. In fact, one of the beautiful things about life is that each of us die in the end. And that, I'll tell you what, death heals all wounds, man. I'm not going to get into all kinds of health stuff, dude. I have had a blown back since I was 18. I've had a lumbar laminectomy. It got so bad. I'm not going to talk about, I'm talking about nerve pain. I could take a nail through my finger and laugh. It's a flesh wound, man. I've cracked my head open. I've had a nail rip open my nose. I mean, I've had broken limbs. I don't want to hear it, And I think part of it is when you take some person who's had a lot of suffering, athletes as an example, and they say, I'm willing to endure this suffering, so don't you be worried about wanting to end the suffering for me, because I want the suffering as a source of transcendence and a source of growth. You don't get the right. You don't get the right to deny them that pain. You keep calling pain a bad thing, and you're using it as a justification to deny them life. And the truth is, if they want that pain, you're imposing on them.
Well, I'm sorry. If they were imposing this bullshit on them, if they were only doing the laboratory experiment on white mice with green eyes that were exactly their constituent and exactly their psychology, then I said, go ahead, you sadistic lunatics, torture yourself, enslave yourself for your stupid ego bullshit, your chasing of your stupid Cheeto. Go ahead, run the fucking wheel so hard, whap it so hard, whap your hands off. Go ahead, you
Gary,
crazy.
I've heard you try to defend virtual reality before.
Well, yeah, of course, because I have to come up with some kind of halfway solution, because we weren't going to solution.
No, virtual reality is a bunch of mice chasing fake cheese. Virtual reality is not the truth. Virtual reality is other than the acceptance of the facts.
No, come on. This is already virtual reality. Reality is I get mad and I punch you in the face. That's friggin' reality. We haven't been in reality for thousands of years. So we're not even physically tuned to our body. We're not playing Tarzan here. We are totally in chains from civilization. So we're already in a virtual reality. And virtual reality is just another virtual reality to pile into that virtual reality. So life is always fake.
If we've been
always
in virtual
a lie.
reality for
It's
so long,
always
why is there still
nonsense.
suffering? Why is there still suffering now that we're in this virtual reality?
Because it's virtual doesn't mean there's no suffering in it. Like I said, if I was...
Well, I've heard you defend before that virtual reality was a place where there's no suffering.
This is the world we would be living in. All right, I wouldn't program this virtual reality, quite obviously.
Let's try it a different way. Let's try this argument a completely different way. If you had your druthers and you had the best scientific minds around you and you could direct them to implement your vision, would you have them create something like a virtual world where people could have no pain, no suffering, no loss, have anything they want? I mean, just sort of like a heaven.
They would still have loss, Corey. You couldn't play virtual reality without implementing passion and desire. So you'd still have an ego to satisfy. You'd still want the woman. You'd still need the woman to satisfy your ego. So you'd still have to have desire in the chase game. All you're doing is changing the maze that you're running in. That's all virtual reality does. It doesn't change the nature of create the deprivation, then create the satisfaction. That's the game the DNA threw us in millions of years ago. We're still playing it. It's tic-tac-toe stupid. The quickest way to satisfy the desire and the need is not to create it in the first place. I was perfectly satisfied and happy and content where I was before I got to this freaky weird planet. I would be satisfied to stay where I was for eternity. That's fine with me. This is way too sloppy. If you people want to play it, it's your business, but quit making me's. Quit allowing the system to pop out people I would claim too smart to play your game. This is a game for dumb people, not smart people. This is a game that's unsophisticated, unnuanced, uncontrollable. It's abhorrent to intelligence. It's inefficient. It's sloppy. It's everything about it is crap. And you people want to wallow in it, then wallow in it. Be cockroaches, but don't tell me I have to keep playing. Don't keep dragging me from my nowhere and throwing me into this somewhere and say, you do it, idiot. Because we have a right to force it on you. We have a right to force it on you. Well, you're defending people who are doing that. They're going to keep doing it, Corey. If you don't stop them, they're just going to keep on making the decision for everybody. They're making a decision for me. They're making a decision for you. They are defining the world. They're going to decide what it looks like. Not any of us. We're not getting a vote. They're going to vote. They're going to vote with their uteruses, and they're going to force the future on the future. They're going to make decisions.
I mean, it's sort of like, if you have a stick, and you want it bent up straight. It's bent over really far. You might crank it really hard on the other direction in order to get it sent up straight. I mean, if that's what you're saying, I understand it as a strategy. But, all said and done, it's just too extreme, man. It's just off the chart. I don't want to say to people, I mean, this is be like young people. I wouldn't say to them, look, life is unmitigated pain, suffering, and there's no justification at all ever for having children. I think I would say children are not something to take lightly. You can't have it all. You have to have the requisite care, and you're going to have to really be devoted in your time, and you're going to have to think about what you're going to be able to provide for this person. And I think you're also going to have to help. You're going to have to help them psychologically.
Undo button.
You're going to have to help them acquire the psychological strength in order to forgive all of this stuff.
What if you accidentally killed somebody? All right?
That's right.
So in your life, say when you're 9 years old, you killed somebody. Okay? It was an accident, but it was out of your kind of sloppiness, your recklessness. You just slopped around. You killed somebody.
Yeah.
You can't undo it. You got to live with the rest of your life understanding that you interrupted a destiny, that you took away a child.
The rest of your life doing great things. You call it a significant point that defined your destiny. How you respond to things is not given by the things. It's what you do with what happens.
Right. I'm just saying the average person, I think, is going to understand me. Okay. They've even made movies out of this. There's an old famous movie, Alfred Hitchcock movie where the guy actually had this happen, accidentally killed his brother when he was a kid, and he's psychologically screwed for the rest of his life, sort of. Because there's no way you can undo it. You can't.
Gary, I've taught in a prison before. I've worked with people who have had really bad things happen to them when they were 17 or 18 and they hardly knew what they were doing.
I'm not talking about the bad part of it. I'm talking about the not being able to undo it part. And people don't have any perspective, okay?
Death undoes everything.
They have a nice, death does not undo everything. It doesn't undo the friggin' Holocaust. It doesn't undo all those suffering. It doesn't undo anything. It just creates the opportunity to put somebody else in my chair, another victim in the roller coaster, so he can fly out and do all the same nonsense I just went through. Why the hell wouldn't I stop that?
If I know
if I know it's stupid, I would have to be insane to just sit back and say, yeah, keep it going, keep it going.
I mean,
Who's
Gary,
DNA molecule? Oh, okay. Yeah, let the DNA molecule fuck with us all at once. As an intelligent human being, I'm going to say, no, I'm going to take control. I'm going to take control because I got a brain. I can understand it's stupid.
By taking control of the meaningful action you can do as a response to what has already occurred. You look at a book like Man's Search for Meaning by Frankl. I mean, this guy is a guy who survived the Holocaust. He was in concentration camps. He watched lots of people, and he wrote what became known as logotherapy. It's used around the world today, and it's about the existential problem of meaning when people are faced with real brutality. And you know what? You can either take the brutality and say, well, screw it then, throw in the towel, or you can say, this calls for resolute action in a better direction.
You keep talking as if I'm talking about the psychological impact on the individual who's going to suffer guilt or something. That's not my point. My point is that this is how the game is played, and you have to take the game for the whole game. You can't just look at the bishop.
Okay, wait.
You can't just look from the queen's perspective. You've got to look from the pawn's perspective and the knight's perspective. You've got to include all the players, and then you look at the whole game and you say, what did they do? They went around the board, annihilated everybody. Okay, came to some finish at the end where somebody says, I win, and then they start all over again and do the same crap all over again, different day. Same shit, different day. Same shit, different day.
No. There's been lots of different ways of living and dying on this planet, and I also think that you're committing a contradiction. In one sense, you're saying we're the product of billions of years of evolution. Then you're saying that we're really this sort of virtual reality of cultural influences that goes back 20,000 years. And then you're saying that it's this kind of reason that you as an individual has, and you're kind of sliding all around there. I mean, to what extent is the virtual reality or the social programming that came about through literacy and other forms of communication technology potentially refiguring what the game is?
It's Shakespeare.
I mean, you don't think morphine ended pain? Public torture ended after morphine was when morphine was discovered and invented. Public torture ended. Now, look at the way that surgery and medicine has changed, and we're in the infancy of it right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a good infancy. So fine. I mean, people are getting their joints replaced at much nicer than they would have in the past. But all the other insidious Dr. Mengele style crap that's coming out of the medical care industry is kind of sadistic. I mean, if you've seen some people die, and they've dragged it out now to a 10-year process, where they watch each one of your cells actually decompose. So let's not even talk about what morphine is sparing human beings, because that's, in my opinion, just nonsense. But that's not I can already find plenty of other examples of the horror of this thing called living here, and the expense of it, and the danger of it, and the sloppiness of it. And you're just saying it's all okay, but somehow it's accomplishing something. It accomplishes nothing. It accomplishes redundancy.
I'm saying it's ambiguous.
200 years from now,
and I'm saying it's the truth.
500 years from now, they're going to have the same dopey TV shows on. The same formula will be obeyed. Create a problem, solve a problem. Create a problem, solve a problem.
TV's not even 100 years old, Gary.
That's all the human being can ever do. He's just going to keep replaying Shakespeare over and over and over and over. The mechanism is in place. Just create the illusion of desire, of value, then chase the stupid thing, chase it at somebody else's expense, create a drama, create a conflict, create some kind of intrigue and underdog, and then create your hero, and then wipe him out and just start all over again. Wipe him out, start all over again. Wipe him out, start all over again. For what? It's a stupid game. Nobody's watching the game. The game has no value. It's just parasites on planet Earth eating each other. I mean, it's insidiously insane to sit there and justify this stupid consume, reproduce for nothing.
I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess we're just at an impasse. I mean, I guess maybe it's fundamentally also that, I do believe that we obviously don't have the evidence. I don't think there's any evidence of aliens, but I do believe that the universe is vast enough that there has to be life elsewhere. It may not be sentience as we know it here, but there has to be life elsewhere. And I think life is indigenous to this cosmos. I mean, what is the similarity between the shape of the moon, a grape, and your skull? Do you ever notice how spheres are natural? They're not just organic, Gary. They're not just organic.
Okay, fine. But you just said it. You just claimed that my beliefs are somehow on some sort of shaky or wobbly ground, and you just made
I think you think that there's no life anywhere else.
You made a claim for truth that is completely beyond your capacity to make it. It is like me saying I think there's purple giant pyramids out in the universe or some other kind of.
I think that we know that we right now have a very narrow definition of life, that one that's been pretty much restricted to life as we experience here on the planet. We know about the immensity of the cosmos, and we've seen already hintings of forms of life even around the near place, enough to make us go, and we've seen enough regularity.
One DNA molecule created all life on Earth. One. Well, I'm just saying. And here we are on this planet covered with corpses, covered with DNA corpses, and yet a second version of DNA hasn't arisen. A second version of another replicating molecule hasn't arisen. Tons of corpses, tons of amino acids, tons of complex chemistry, all kinds of environments. It never happened a second time on planet Earth. Yeah. One molecule 4 billion years ago replicated. It's never happened since. Right. One time.
Right.
Well, I'm just saying,
Gary,
that this universe
I know, but you're not using the right. You're not using the right framework to understand that fact. I mean, think of it this way: like during a developmental period or developmental cycle of, say, a planet or even of an organism, if a child doesn't learn language at a certain point, it never will. That is, there's a critical acquisition period under which it's not going to spontaneously develop. It's not going to spontaneously develop after that critical period occurred. There was a critical time under which all the conditions were right for life to emerge.
Well, you can say whether they're ripe or not. The point is, it only happened one time.
Right. And the timing was right. That was the time when it was. That's when the time when it could have happened. That was the time when it happened.
The perfect storm was right, and maybe that perfect storm is beyond the capacity of the chemistry to ever concoct again.
Do you know how big the cosmos is, man?
It doesn't. Does it matter? Do you know how much of the cosmos we are seeing pieces of? Do you know how big a head start the cosmos has had? The cosmos has had maybe tens of billions of years, even possibly. Okay, at least 10 billion year head start on us. Okay? All the uranium on this planet came from stars blowing up elsewhere in the cosmos. Right. Okay, so obviously no other life form in that cosmos got 1 million years ahead of us technologically. They never got 500 million years ahead of us.
You had basically hydrogen, helium, things like that.
They never evolved into instruments that could control their environment any better than we are. They made a peep on their planet and then they died. Okay, nothing ever got this technically advanced. Because if they had, they would have got 1 million years from now. Our technology would be so powerful that we could ignite the Saturn. We could turn Saturn into a second star. 1 million years from now, that's where our technology would be. We would be making so much noise in the universe, everybody would hear us. They've had 1 billion year head start on us.
I don't
billions of years
about all that. I mean, some of that is. I do think, from my perspective, one would have to address why, and different physical laws. I mean, Tyler Volk's book is wonderful, called Meta Patterns. He was a Bateson scholar, but yeah, if you just look at the moon, look at a grape and look at your skull, to try to look at what a sphere is, why the laws of physics, why surface area and volume are related in such a way that it's more than ontogeny in biology. It has to do with physical laws as well. I mean, there's an orderliness that's beyond biology. I think sometimes, from my perspective, you're too willing to reduce the cosmos to the biology. And
consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction. That's right. I reduced it to what
those four terms I have such a problem with, Gary. I mean, first off, consumption and reproduction, those aren't the purpose or goal of life. Those are the way that life, those are the preconditions for life's continuance and maintenance. And what you're omitting over there is creative. What do people produce rather than consume or reproduce? People actually create things. Like right now, trying to create a coherent philosophy. How does that fit into your four? You're struggling to produce a coherent philosophy for people to live by. Is that consumption, reproduction, addiction, or cannibalism?
Well, obviously, intelligence isn't one of those things, but it's going to be applied to those purposes.
Okay, well, it's not one of those things. How does it fit in there?
As is quite obvious. Well, like I said, I've already put intelligence on the pedestal. I've already said the logic, like do unto others as others would do unto you. These simple truths of our existence are far more valuable than all of our Cheeto chasing and all of our ego and all of our stoicism and all this other crap. The simple logic that it's a dumb game.
Okay, so that's how. Can I just ask you? So, what do you mean by cannibalism?
It's the anti to this. It's the cleanser to the garbage. It's the dish soap to the grease.
I mean, you got to explain it to me. I don't understand. Again, this is one issue. You talk all the time about people abusing language. What do you mean by cannibalism? It just sounds like shock value. I mean, what is? I mean, when people are eating other humans, that's cannibalism.
Just take reproduction to its natural course. Okay, a cell reproduces. It doesn't know it's in a small environment. It doesn't know it's in a beaker. It just reproduces. So it reproduces in crazy volume. So the first life form basically soiled the earth with oxygen. That was its waste product.
So when I have a salad,
well, let me just finish it. So the new life forms had to adapt to the sewage. So they became sewage eaters. They ate the sewage of the first life forms.
Sure.
All right. Now they started replicating too much. So they're covering the earth. And so the only thing that's going to be able to survive is something that maybe eats this abundant thing called life. Okay, so a life eater is now going to have a huge advantage because I can steal your energy. You have a whole big pocket of sunlight inside of you, and instead of waiting for the sun to give me the power, I can just eat your ass, and I own your sunlight. Okay, so that's the game. And so on a closed plant, on an isolated closed system, cannibalism is inevitable.
See, I think that's so funny though, Gary, because
evolution becomes cannibalism. The living eat the living. The sentient eat the sentient.
Right. I mean, not only do I agree with that, I think it's so funny that so many of the subscribers on your, people that subscribe to your channel, they have done so many snafu sort of spoofs on me with the universe haunting itself as another and making fun of my claims that basically it is the way that we haunt ourselves as another. And yet that's basically your position on cannibalism. Your position on cannibalism is that life is an organism that devours itself. I just think it's forgivable. I think the difference between us is that you think it's an unjustified fluke and a menace, and I think
it's an insane waste.
I think it's a purposeful, inevitable expression of cosmic order.
And it would be fine if it wasn't sentient, okay? Like I said, but when you are consuming, when you are feeding on things of equal value to yourself, it's like a 4 eating a 4, and then eating a 3, and then eating a 2, and then eating a 3, and then eating a 4. Obviously, the 4 has now consumed more value, more numbers than its own value is worth. And that's how life functions. For every one for every one lion cub that reaches its first birthday, there's 10 little dead little corpses, 10 little baby lion cubs made the opportunity for that one to exist. And 20 dead hyenas. There's 20 dead hyenas. Well, I'm just a big deal. 20, yes, all this horror, all this brutality, for what?
What an economical system seems brilliantly designed. It's amazing. A system that could eat itself. It's practically a perpetual motion machine. It's fascinating. I can't believe the fact that you're not fascinated over inheriting over 4 billion years worth of intelligence, and you just pop into it sort of bestowed with these gifts beyond your personal organism. It's quite fascinating.
Well, whatever. That's where the logic points. It's just the truth, and the truth is tragic. The truth
is tragic, Gary. I agree.
We're playing tic-tac-toe. Playing tic-tac-toe with blood. Blood.
It's blood. It's tragic. The world's a bloody spectacle, and it gives people...
Well, spectacle is the wrong word to use, because, no, it's just bloody. It's a bloody horror.
It's a bloody horror. It's a mess. It's a lot of things. It's a...
What would it have to do, Corey?
What would beauty and music and wonder?
When does it get too ludicrous for you? So, let's say we have World War III, and let's say it involves a huge food famine, which is really likely, because the UN's feeding almost 1 billion people on this planet. But let's just say, so let's say 2 billion people die in World War III, and they died bad. I mean, slow, hard starvation, death. All right, is that a high enough number for you?
How high do you have
I would have for you? For Corey and Don, finally say, okay, this is too stupid. How bad do I have to make it before Corey says this is a little too stupid to continue?
For me,
this dog too fucking rabid to sit there and pet. Let's throw it in the fucking toilet and flush the bastard because it's too fucking broken.
For me, the end will be when the antinatalist position grows in popularity as it merges with the transhumanist position, and as tons of people who are little egomaniacs who have now wanted to be cyborgs their whole life, and when they no longer want to reproduce, but all they want to do is continue their own life endlessly in some sort of virtual thing, I'm going to unplug. Yes, I'm not going to do a virtual download, and I would strongly advocate policy against somebody doing it.
But you're still going to be here. See, that's the catch of the game. You can't unplug. If I could just unplug, Corey, if I could just pull my plug out and I'm done, okay, that would be fine. But I believe in this do unto other thing. I believe that these other consciousnesses are, in fact, the same as me. They're just the same game being played there. So if I'm still allowing... little girls to be born in Indonesia and sold into fucking rape slavery. If I'm allowing that to continue, I might as well be living that life, okay? It doesn't matter when my name's Gary or my name's Alice or Susie
Are you
Blue.
saying that right now you're actively trying to do something to end those horrors?
We're a sentient thing. Well, how we all arrive here, we just show up all of a sudden on planet Earth, I mean, it's not like we schedule our destination and we arrive here. We're all just land here. We fly out of a vagina and 4 years or so later we say, holy crap, I'm on Earth. And that's going to happen to somebody else and somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. So you're still going to be in the game, Corey. Your name will be different. Your hairstyle will be different. Your nose won't be broken. But you're going to be you, essentially. You're going to have your ideas. Your themes will be running inside your consciousness. You're going to have the same kind of gear work, pretty much. And so you're going to be here again, Corey, and you're going to have to look at it and watch it. Or you might even be me, right? In the sense that you might have a philosophical bent that's a little down, Corey, instead of an up, Corey. And so then you're really going to be in trouble because then you're not going to be stoic about all this stuff. You're just going to be goddamn sad.
I don't know what to say about all this. I mean, what do you want me to say about all that, Gary? I don't know. I mean...
Well, we're all rats, Corey. The fact that you can make distinctions between them is your problem, not my problem. I'm saying it's all rats in the maze. It doesn't matter whether it's white rat or black rat or brown rat. If I'm going to be arbitrarily pulling one up and kick it in the balls, it just doesn't matter which rat I kick in the ball.
I guess I just so obvious. I mean, I can't imagine a rational person would disagree with a lot of the claims, but I think the point is the hypocrisy between the espoused statements and values and the actual action and implement of that. I think it's one thing to get out there and to actually try to make a difference and end suffering. It's another thing to sit around and talk about it as an important thing to do.
It's the first step. Man, I'm sorry. I don't have the power to do it. I don't have the power to fix it.
Why? Says
society does. I can't make a Hoover Dam. I can't outlaw nuclear power from my living room. I don't stop nuclear power plants in my living room. I stop it by convincing other people that it's a bad idea, let's not do it, and that's how I stop it.
Well, no,
And
but
it's the same
you're
thing with
saying
this
who cares
argument.
about any of that? That's all incidental. Just don't have kids.
Look, Corey, if I had the red button, okay, if I had the blow the planet up button, I'd press the damn thing, okay?
That's
I don't have the button.
That is horrible. That is an absolutely horrible thing to say. No.
Like I said, it's only horrible from your perspective. Obviously, from my perspective, it's the only rational course of action.
No.
Mr. Spock would jump on top of me.
You're imposing upon people who would disagree with you.
So what? They disagree with me with nonsense. They'd say, God says you can't do that. Or, my ego said, I invested in grandchildren. You can't take my grandchildren away. They'd say some kind of crap that doesn't mean anything.
Well, I guess on this note, why don't we wrap it up? Do you have anything else? We've gone an hour. I don't know what else to say. I mean, this is.
I would go just as far just to say that these are all themes that have been talked about for thousands of years by human beings. They're in the religions. These themes, these ideas. And the religions have just been perverted into silly social organizations. They've sort of lost their mission, but all of this stuff is in there.
Oh, I agree. You're crypto-religious. I give you that.
Well, okay, why be polite, right? Why even try to have communication with people if you're going to just be insulting? I mean, that's just nonsense. I'm not crypto-dogmatic. I'm entirely requiring people to make logical arguments, and I'm just explaining how the fundamental foundation of this game being played has been realized by human beings for a long time, and we keep allowing a minority of people, okay, the non-meek,
no, you're a minority.
the non-masses, to keep making the decisions for everybody else.
That's you. You're the minority trying to make a decision for the masses.
The emperors and the idiots run the friggin' world. And it's because the rest of the people have been too passive and stoic and sit on their ass and disinterested that we keep letting the emperors and the idiots run the world.
I mean, at any rate, I guess I would end with some statement about, in my own life, I think it's ambiguous. There are times when I have been in great despair. You know, in my youth, I struggled with suicide. I was very depressed. And I noticed a pattern of the depression. And for me, it was when I knew I had stuff I was supposed to do and I wouldn't do it. And then I would feel bad, and then I would get into a spiral about it, and it would become its own kind of nightmare. And you know, rather than taking drugs and other kinds of things to try to deal with my own, I just learned to stay active and to try to keep busy. And the busier I am and the more that I have meaningful projects, and by that I mean things that I do think make people's lives better, they help alleviate suffering, they give people more possibilities, they help people grow in their imagination for a better tomorrow and all that other kind of stuff. I feel better about myself, and I'm not having children. I think, we both talked about it. I think we both have concerns over, people not thinking seriously about what it means to be a parent, and, people wanting it all, imagining that they can have it all, and like they're going to have a full life and all kinds of whatnot, and then they're also going to throw kids in there too. They don't realize, I think, the seriousness of what's involved. But I don't think, to me, all of the problems out there, wars, violence, child abuse, all the other things, that doesn't mean end life. That's an injustice to all the people who have suffered before us, who have been on a mission to make the world a better place, and they have in so many ways. I mean, I think that we owe it to all the people who have died before us to continue on this slow, steady mission of making it a better place. And to say that you're more likely to talk people into not having kids than you are to talk people into ending violence, I think that's an illogical argument. I don't think you have any justification for the claim that a better argument is, for me, a better argument is end war, end violence, and try to help bring about social equality than saying, let's get everyone to agree that let's just not have no more reproduction ever.
As long as the emperors and the idiots are running the world, that won't happen. And you're claiming to know what the dead died for. I'm saying if we could raise all the World War II victims, and we could raise everybody who was dead, and they could speak from the grave after their long, horrible death process. Okay, my grandmother, before she, when she was 100 years old, she would have testified differently than when she was 107 years old, okay? Because the last 5 years of her life was shit. Or the last 3 years anyway. Absolute horror. She'd never go through it again. She'd say, fuck you, don't impose life on me, because I'm not doing that 3 years ever again.
Right.
So I say the World War II victims, the Holocaust victims, they'd be speaking from the grave saying, no, you people are too ludicrous. Do you know what you put me through? Do you know what my family went through? You fucking murdered.
Oh no. I think I lost you. Oh no.
Yeah, well, I guess it's good timing, right?
Yeah, I was going to say,
if I won't shut up, the machine will shut me up.
I don't know what happened there. It went fuzzy and then it ended. So, well, thank you, Gary. It was fun.
Yeah, well, look, I think we're good for each other. We both talk fast. We both can say a lot, and I think we provoke it out of each other. So I think that's good.
Well, that was great, and I will. I'm going to post it, and I'm going to also post this little tail end too.
Yeah, good enough.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Have a good one.
Right.